Hello and welcome to the Flipping and Wholesaling Houses in New York show. I am Michael Pinter, where I teach you how to start flipping or wholesaling houses in New York, or if you're already doing it, how to grow your business. Now, I had a question: what happens after you sign a purchase agreement, which in New York we call a contract? So this is a lot happens after, but first we're going to talk about what happens outside of New York, and then we'll talk about what happens inside New York. So outside of New York, when you sign a purchase agreement or a contract, that they call it a P&S, a purchase and sale, what happens is that you usually get, as a buyer, a time period for due diligence where you can check to see if you really want to go through it. In California, they call that in escrow or opening escrow, and that gives you time to, if you're trying to wholesale the property, to find the buyer, and if you're trying to buy the property, to actually check into it and see what's going on with the title. But in New York, it's dramatically different. In New York, all that due diligence gets done before the contract's signed. So if you want to do an inspection, you're going to do it before the contract's signed, after a price is agreed to, and any repairs that you would want as a buyer, you would put into the contract in a rider, which is an addendum, extra part of the contract. And because, again, the way real estate is transacted in New York is so dramatically different than all other states, it's important to understand that a real estate transaction in 49 states happens between a buyer and a seller, but in New York it happens between a seller's attorney and a buyer's attorney. So when I buy in New York and I agree to a price and a seller agrees to a price that I'm offering, the seller's attorney has to generate that contract, send it to my attorney, then they negotiate. They each earn several $1,000s in fees, unfortunately. That's part of your closing costs. And that really starts the process. Once the contract's signed, after we're in agreement, I have no outs. I have no contingencies. I have to either assign the contract, or I have to, assuming the contract is assignable, or I have to actually close on the property. So it's important to understand. So in New York, after a contract is signed, what I do is really depends on what I'm looking to do. If I'm looking to wholesale the property, I will try to arrange a time to show it to my buyer's list, and I will send out to my buyer's list this property and get an idea of what people are looking for, to pay for it, and what they, do they want to see it, that kind of thing. Some people will give me sight unseen offers that I may decide to take that, I may not. Even if I get an offer and I'm making money, I may still want to show it if I think I can get more money. Sometimes if a property, let's say, is occupied, I can't show it, occupied with, let's say, uncooperative tenants, I may still try and put it out to my buyer's list and see if there's interest. Sometimes there is interest, sometimes there isn't. And then I have to make a decision as to whether I do want to close on this, or I want to wholesale it and assign the contract. And hopefully I'm in contract at a price low enough that I have that option. That's really one of the greatest things about buying properties at a deep discount, is that you have options, right? I have an option. I can wholesale it. Worst case, maybe I can get out of it for the same price I got into, but usually I can wholesale it at a profit. And then if I don't want to wholesale it, I can close on it and do the work to it, or if it needs work or not. Look at the background there. Okay, so it's important to understand that the entire, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but the business really depends on buying properties at a deep enough discount that you can make a profit. That is it. So unfortunately, a lot of people get into this business and they're afraid to make offers that are at a deep enough discount, right? They're afraid. The guy told me he wants 500. I know I can only pay 300. You've got to make offers, right? The business really comes down to making offers, and making offers at a price where you can make a profit. Now, one of the great advantages of New York is that the profits are usually stronger. This bird is making a lot of noise. Bird. Is that you can make a much bigger, I see why the guy put out food for the bird. Okay, so the profits in other parts of the country where it's, let's say, easier to get a contract, so I'm talking about the hot areas, so Phoenix, Dallas, Las Vegas, these areas are super easy to get into contract, right? You don't need attorneys involved. It's simple. If you don't want to close, if you don't want to go through the contract, you can just get out because you have an inspection contingency. But in those areas, assignment profits, or assignment fees, as they call it, so the difference in what you can usually get under contract for and what you can sell it to a cash buyer for, are usually smaller, right? $8,000, $10,000. In New York, it's much higher. My average wholesale fee is, I think, over $35,000 now. So there are pros and cons to everywhere. But really what happened, so if I was out of state and getting back to the question, if I was out of state and I signed the purchase contract, the first thing I would do is put it out to a buyer's list and see if they wanted to buy it, if I didn't want to close on it. If I did want to close on it, I probably still would put it out to a buyer's list, but I would want to see what I can make for it. And if I didn't want to close on it, then I can just get out of the contract when the inspection contingency ends. In New York, unfortunately, we don't have that option, right? The only properties in New York where there are inspection periods or contingencies are, larger commercial properties where somebody just assumes that you're going to have to check the leases and check all the legal documents. But in New York, on a residential contract, if you told a seller, I need a 14-day period, and that seller had any kind of attorney with any experience or any knowledge whatsoever, which they usually do, we'd usually be in a situation where the guy would say, I'm not going to prepare this contract because the guy could just walk away and I don't want to waste my time. That's really it's really an incredible circuitous route because attorneys prepare contracts here, they don't want to prepare contracts where the buyer can walk. That's really what it comes down to, as crazy as it sounds. Now, if you found that seller who says, I don't want to use an attorney, and you signed a simple contract with them, you've got to understand that if you really want to close on that property or assign it, you probably should use an attorney on your end, because you don't want to get sued later. So here's what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that since it's customary in 99.9% of the real estate transactions in New York for the seller to be represented by an attorney, in a situation where you find the seller doesn't need to be represented by an attorney, what could happen is you could have a problem later if the guy gets upset and thinks you took advantage of it. Now, I've closed deals where the seller didn't have an attorney. Birds are all over the place. But I had them sign a very strongly worded affidavit prepared by my attorney that's saying that they chose not to be represented. I'm guessing if you're new to this and you think you can just get it done without that, you should be concerned, because if there's a problem later, you're going to be in big trouble, because people are not going to understand that the seller didn't want to use an attorney and that you weren't just taking advantage of somebody. But again, people do it. I'm just something to be concerned about. It's something that I've always been concerned about. Birds here are nuts. I always wanted to close deals without an attorney because it seemed so simple and so easy. But then when I actually got into doing a couple of deals where the seller refused to have an attorney, it actually was very, very difficult to get the transactions done, because there are so many things that a seller's attorney does in a transaction in New York. For example, clear all the title issues. So I had one deal where it was an estate, people had died, and I had to go find the death certificates, which is something that a sales attorney would have done. It's just there was no sales attorney, so it was a huge pain in the ass. But right before closing, I had to do that. Another situation, it was a brother and a sister, and they told me that they wanted everything split 50-50. I didn't remember, because usually a seller's attorney is going to prepare a checklist, which is a list of checks of how the proceeds want to be distributed. But I didn't remember that, and there was no sales attorneys. We got to the closing, there was one check, and they were all pissed off. So I think it's important to understand that if you don't use a sales attorney in New York, there's very important components of the transaction that are going to be not done and may fall on you, may or may not be worth it. It's just important to understand that is possible. So not possible, it's absolutely going to happen. I mean, theoretically, if everything is completely clear and the seller doesn't care, fine, but there are certain things that a seller's attorney is going to do in a transaction that if there is no seller's attorney, it's probably going to fall on you if you're assigning the contract. So that is important to understand. I wish I had water. I have water inside, I got to get it. But I hope this was helpful. If you are interested in all the ways I can help you, go to howtoflipnewyork.com. If you're interested in seeing more about my course that teaches how to do what I do, go to howtoflipnewyorkcourse.com. If you're interested in finding out more about coaching that I have, go to coaching.howtoflipnewyork.com. And if you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe. If you're watching on any channel, please click the thumbs up. The likes really help me. Also, keep the comments coming. I try to go live 5 times a week, and I don't always know what to say. So if you can ask any question, if it's a simple comment, I will respond with a reply. If it's something I've covered before, I will send you links to the video. And if it's a new topic, I'll do a new video on it. So thank you very, very much for watching.